Hello everyone, welcome back to Networks Together. I am Abhishek Das, and in today's video we are going to start building our Versa SD-WAN topology. If you want to know how to set up EVNG for your home lab, please check out our last video. Let's first try to understand what we are going to achieve. A Versa SD-WAN deployment is divided into two parts, head-end deployment and branch deployment. In this video, we'll focus on head-end deployment. It is recommended to implement hidden devices in redundancy. However, for POC and lab purpose, we can use only one node for each component. In our lab, we'll use one director, one analytics, and one controller. Now, there are different types of interfaces. First, we'll start with northbound interface, which is used for out-of-band management. We will configure Ethernet 0 interface for that on each component. We will similarly configure southbound interface and we'll use Ethernet 1 for that. Then we need to build communication within these hidden devices. We will integrate analytics with director, we'll build communication between analytics and controller, and we'll onboard the controller on director. This will complete our hidden deployment. In Versa SD-WAN network, these hidden devices are taking care of the role of control plane, management plane, and orchestration plane. This can be deployed on cloud, on premises, it can be hosted by managed service provider, or it can be hybrid model, combination of all those three options. Now for branch deployment, there will be different site types like data centers, hub sites, and branches. Now for connectivity between these sites, we will use two transport, one MPLS and one internet. In production in real life, there can be multiple MPLS links from different ISPs. However, for simplicity purpose, we'll use only two transport in our lab. Now remote sites can have single transport or multiple transport. There will be different types of topology based on the criticality of that site. One site can have both MPLS and internet link, or only MPLS link, or only internet link. Now in Versa SD-WAN, controller acts on control plane. It is basically a root reflector, similar to vSmart in Cisco SD-WAN. However, it also acts as a staging server. This is similar to vBond. As controller is our staging server in Versa SD-WAN, it will be used to onboard all the remote edge devices. So it should have reachability with remote sites with all the available underlays. For that purpose, we'll configure two more interfaces on controller, one for MPLS and one for internet link. In brief, at top we have all the hidden devices, so basically our control, management and orchestration plane. Then we have all the transport for underlay, and then finally all the remote sites which will be part of data plane in Versa SD-WAN network.
Let's open EVNG. We'll add all the hidden nodes. So first director. We are using version 21.1.3. We have only one director, so let's give it a name, director 1. We'll keep all the default settings here. For QEMU, I will suggest to use version 4 and console should be VNC. Now let's add analytics. Again, same version 21.1.3. Analytics 1. QEMU should be 4.1.0 and console should be telnet. And the last one is controllers. So we'll add flex VNF. We have only one controller. So controller 1. This should be 4 and console should be telnet. As we have discussed earlier, there are different types of interfaces. So we'll add network management cloud 0 for northbound. This will give an IP from 192.168.29 range to each component. We'll connect Ethernet 0 interface. Now for southbound, I will add one layer 2 switch with very basic configuration. Let's give it a name. Let's change the icon. Okay, so I'll connect Ethernet 1 interface from each node. Now the last part is to configure two more interfaces on controller 1, one for MPLS and one for internet. So I'll quickly add two networks. We'll connect Ethernet 2 interface for the MPLS and Ethernet 3 with the internet network. So this will complete our headend deployment. So let's power on all the devices. This will take time. So meanwhile, let me show you the IP schema. So we are going to use 192.168.29 range for northbound. For southbound, we'll use 1010.29 range. For overlay, we'll use 172.16.0.0/16 range. For MPLS, we'll use 1010.10.0/24, and for internet, we'll use 192.168.100.0/24. So I'll quickly configure these switches. Now let's open director. It's still booting. Okay, so now we are getting the prompt. So default username is administrator and password is Versa123. So it is asking, do you want to enter setup? For now, we'll skip this part. Let's check the IP of Ethernet 0. So it's getting 192.168.29.133. So I'll use putty to log in that. You can also use admin username and the same default password, Versa123. Now there are different way to configure the northbound and southbound IPs. First, we can do directly from here. So we can use sudo if config and the interface name, for example, Ethernet 0, and then we have the IP is 192.168.29.101/24, and we'll make the port up. So this will change the IP, so you have to re-log in. You have to log in again with this new IP. Similarly, let's configure the southbound IP. So sudo if config Ethernet 1, the IP is 1010.29.101/24, and we'll make the port up. So we have configured both northbound and southbound IPs. However, these IPs are not persistent. So to make it persistent, we need to do the changes on the interface configuration file. So that file is located at etc/networks directory, and then the file name is interface. So as it is currently configured DHCP, so we'll change this to static and we'll configure the address 192.168.29.101. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0 and gateway is 192.168.29.1. Similarly, we'll configure the second interface, Ethernet 1. This should be static. The address is 1010.29.101 and subnet mask is /24. We'll save the configuration. Okay, so we're done with the interface IP configuration. Now there is one more way to do the same thing. So basically we can run a script. The script is located at opt versa, then vnms, then scripts directory. The script name is vnms startup. So you can directly run this script. Yes. So now it is asking, do you want to set up a host name for this system? We'll say yes. Then host name is director1. It will create a new hostname entry, DNS entry in these two files. Now it is asking, do you want to set up network interface configuration? Yes. We'll do for Ethernet 0 first. So it's giving an message that this IP is already configured. So we'll reconfigure. We'll use the same IP. The mask is 255.255.255.0. We'll configure gateway. Gateway is 192.168.29.1. Do you want to configure any other interface? Yeah, we'll configure Ethernet 1 for southbound. Yes, we have already configured, so we'll reconfigure the same IP. And the subnet mask is /24. Do you want to add any more interface? No. Now we have to define which interface is northbound and which one is southbound. So northbound is Ethernet 0 in our lab, southbound is Ethernet 1 in our lab. We don't want to add any more southbound interface. Now it's asking, do you want to configure any HA port? But for our lab, we don't have any, we have only one director, so we don't need any HA port. So no, this will be no. Now it is asking, do you want to set the password? So basically when we log in for the first time using the GUI, it will give a prompt to change the password. So this is a good practice to change the default password. So we'll do yes. Now it will stop all these services and restart. So this will take time. So meanwhile, we'll configure the IPs of analytics the same way. The default username is Versa and the password is Versa123. So currently it's getting an IP if config 134. We'll change that. So I'll directly configure. We'll configure 102 for Ethernet 0. And for southbound, I'll configure 10.10.10.29.102/24. To make this configuration persistent, I'll do the changes at etc network and then interfaces file. We'll make it static. To save the time, I'll just paste the remaining configuration. We'll save the configuration. Okay, so we have completed the configuration for both Ethernet 0 and 1. Now let's do the same for controller. Default username is admin, password is Versa123. Now for controller, we'll only configure northbound interface IP, Ethernet 0. For southbound, we'll do when we'll do the onboarding uh, on the director. So we'll configure the Ethernet 0, 103. We'll make this configuration persistent. We'll save the configuration. So we are done with the basic configuration for all these three headends. Now let's see the status of the director. So the setup is complete now. So basically we have completed the basic setup for director. So there is one more command to check, if all the services are running. VSH status. This can be used, on analytics and also on FlexVNF to check the status of different services. Now for lab, this is fine. However, if we are implementing a director in production or maybe for POC, so if we see the current system license, this license is valid only for 15 days. However, suppose you are doing some POC and you need maybe license for 90 days or 120 days. For that, you have to uh, ask for the new license, and for that first you have to create one node ID. So from CLI you can request system, and then you can create a node ID. This will generate the node ID. Then you have to send that node ID to Versa network customer support team, and then Versa networks will generate a key, and they will send that key to you. Then you have to load that key to activate the director license basically. So once you have installed the director license, the next step is to install a certificate and keys. For that you can generate a CSR, certificate signing request. Let me show you the format. So basically you have one script and you have to provide all the variable information like domain name, country, organization name, email, and all those things. And you have to run the script. Once that is done, you have to verify the CSR, and then you have to submit that CSR to external CA so that they can sign the certificate request. Once you will receive the signed certificate, then you have to install it along with the private key on the director node. But for a lab, we don't need to do that step. So now we can open the GUI for the first time. Okay, so this is the home page. This is basically the login page. Now we'll use the default username first. It should ask to change the password. We'll log in with the new password. So this is our GUI of Versa Director. So we haven't done any configuration yet. So first we need to integrate the analytics. So currently we don't have this particular page, because we haven't uh, built the communication between analytics and the director, right? So for that, first we have to so we are at administration page. We'll go to connectors and then analytics cluster. So analytics has different role. So it can work as a log forwarder, it can work as a log collector or search node, right? So that's why in production, this particular device is configured in a cluster mode. However, for POC, sorry, for POC, even for POC and for lab purpose, we can use it as a standalone mode, in a standalone mode. So first we have to give a cluster name. Now in real life, it will have multiple nodes, but for us in lab, we have only one node. Analytics 1, need to provide the northbound IP 102. We'll use port 8443. This is a secure option. Then we'll provide a southbound IP. We'll add, and then the collector port 1234. Okay. Even after adding the information of the analytics in the director, this page will not open, because first we have to install the certificates of director in analytics, and also the vice versa. So let's open the director. Now we have to run one script, and the script is located at opt versa vnms scripts. So this is the folder. We'll move to that folder. Then finally to this folder. Now we have different files here. The first one is cluster setup configuration. We have to edit this file and then we'll run this particular Python script. So first we'll edit this one. Okay, so we have to provide the cluster information, the director information, and if we have multiple nodes, so we have to provide the IPs of each node. Now for our lab, our cluster size is only one. So we are using the same cluster name we have configured here, when cluster, VN cluster. So we don't have to change that. So we don't have any forwarding nodes, so forwarding count is 0. Then we have to provide the director information, so we have only one director. We'll use this default username and we'll provide the password during the script. Now we have to provide this northbound IP, so basically the management address of the director, so that's the northbound IP 192.168.29.101. Then we have to provide the southbound interface IP of the director, so it is 10.10.29.101. Now we don't have any director 2, so we'll move directly to the analytics part. So this is for node 1. So in our lab we have only one node, so we'll provide only information for this node only. However, for POC, sorry, for production you can have multiple nodes. You have to repeat the same step for different nodes. So default username will use Versa. Then so our mode should be standalone. So you're not configuring in a cluster. So we'll change this mode to standalone mode. Then you have to provide the host name. The host name is analytics1. And what type of node this will be? This is a standalone node. Otherwise, you have to mention whether it is search node or forwarding node, all those things. Then you have to provide a northbound IP. And then we have to provide the southbound IP here for both listen address and collector address. So 10.10.29.102 and the same for collector address. Collector port we have already configured 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one, so we'll keep the same. So that's it. We don't have, we do not have any other nodes, so we can save the configuration. Now we have to run this script. So let's run this one. So we'll use sudo, then the file name. So it is asking for the password for the director and also analytics. Yes. Now this will take time. Okay, so WAN cluster installation is complete now. Now after this, we have already installed the analytics certificate in director into director. However, we haven't done the other way around. So for that, we have to run this script one more time. Before that, let me show you some arguments is required. So basically, there are different arguments. So if we have, suppose in production, we already uh, configured the certificate, of on the director. In that case, we just need to run this post setup argument. So basically, it will installs it will install the Versa director certificate on each analytics node and also register the director host name on analytics UI. But in our lab, we haven't done the certification part, so we'll have to add one more command, this one. So it will generate the Versa director certificate. So basically you have to use these two arguments. So first is post setup and then this one. Again, we have to provide a password. Again, this will take time. Okay, so the post setup is complete now. Okay, so now let's try if we are able to open this page now. Still, so what we have to do first, we have to log in this GUI one more time because now we have changed the certificate. Now let's move to analytics. Now this page is opening. We haven't configured any tenant yet, so it will not show any details. So for that, first we have to onboard the controller. So let's go to admin. So before you do the onboarding, we have to do two more steps. First, we have to configure the overlay network. So we'll use 172.16.0.0/16. Let me try one more time. Okay, and the next is to configure a static route for this particular interface towards the controller. So for that we have to go to system, then static routes. We'll give it a name, overlay network. Subnet is 172.16.0/16, and the next hop will be the southbound IP of the controller, which we haven't configured yet. 10.10.29.103, and the interface will be Ethernet 1, the southbound interface of director. Once this is done, then we'll go to workflows. So we haven't created any organization, so there are two ways. We can directly configure the parent organization from here. However, it is not recommended. So what we'll do, we'll add the controller, and from here you have the option to create organization. So what it will do, it will create the parent organization, and you can also create sub organization if it is required. So we'll give it a name tenant 1. This should be 1 because this is the first organization which we are creating, and we can keep all the other values with the default one. Then we have to add the cluster, and we'll add few support roles. Once this is done, then we can do the configuration for controller. We'll give it a name controller 1. So this controller will act as a staging controller as well to onboard the edges. So we have to check this box. We need to integrate the cluster with the controller. So we'll use this one, WAN cluster. Then we have to provide the IP of the northbound, which we have already configured. This should be reachable. So reachability is fine. So we'll continue. We'll provide the location name. Continue. Now we have to provide the control name, this network. So this is basically your southbound network. So let's give it a name, control. it will use VNI 0/0. So now VNI is basically a virtual network interface. That's a logical name. So if you map this logical interface to physical, this will be your Ethernet to 1. So this southbound interface is your VNI 0/0. So I will configure the IP 10.10.29.103/24, and the gateway will be the IP which we have configured on switch 254. We are not running any routing protocol. Continue. Now we have to create the transport network. So we are using two underlay here. So one MPLS and one internet. So we'll create these two network. So first is MPLS. Now suppose you have multiple MPLS, then you can use MPLS 1, 2, 3, and you have to select a domain. So there are two domains basically, MPLS. So and internet. The second one is now internet. We'll select the domain internet. Okay. Now we'll configure those two interfaces. So VNI 01. So this Ethernet 2 is equivalent to VNI 01, and Ethernet 3 is VNI 02. So 01 is your MPLS. We'll configure one IP. We'll use this one, and the gateway will be 254, and this will act as a staging server. Now we'll configure the IP for internet. And the gateway is 254. And we'll deploy. Okay, so the controller is deployed now. Now if we go to analytics, we should have one tenant, not yet. Okay, so now we have the tenant 1, and it's also showing one site. So this is your controller. Okay, so that's it. So this completes our hidden deployment. Now we are good to deploy the remote edges. So in the subsequent videos, we'll go through different topics like how to create workflows, how to create template, how to do the device binding, what is device group, and then we'll do the onboarding of the remote edges in different way via script, via URL JTP, and then further we'll explore other topics. So that's it for today's video. If you have any question or any query, please do comment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.